The stars had never looked so close. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery, watching the strange new solar system spread out before them. After 3 months of traveling faster than light, they had finally reached Kepler 442. It was humanity's first real journey into deep space, and Jake felt the weight of history on his shoulders. "Captain, we're getting some unusual readings," said Dr. Lisa Martinez from her science station. She was the smartest person Jake had ever met, and if she was worried, that meant something was wrong. "What kind of readings?" Jake asked, moving to stand behind her chair. "Energy signatures, big ones, and they're moving toward us." Commander Ryan Blake looked up from his tactical display. "I'm seeing them too, sir. 5 large objects coming in fast. They'll be here in about 10 minutes. Jake felt his heart speed. This was it. After decades of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they were about to get their answer. "Amy, are you picking up any communications?" Lieutenant Amy Chun shook her head. "Nothing yet, Captain. But I'm monitoring all frequencies." The next few minutes felt like hours. Jake watched the objects get closer on the main screen. They were ships, that much was clear. But they were unlike anything humans had ever built. They seemed to glow with their own light, and their shape was hard to understand. They looked like they were made of crystal and metal at the same time. "Captain," Amy said suddenly, "I'm getting something. It's beautiful." The bridge filled with a sound like singing. It was musical and strange, but somehow peaceful. Jake had never heard anything like it. "Can you translate it?" he asked. Amy worked at her station for a moment. "The computer is trying to figure it out. It's not like any language we know." "I think I'm getting something." The singing stopped and a new voice came through the speakers. It was clearly artificial, created by their translation computers, but the words were clear enough. "Greetings, children of the third planet. We welcome you to the galaxy." Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. For humanity. "Open a channel, Amy." "Channel open, sir." "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Discovery. We come in peace. We're explorers from Earth, and we're honored to meet you." "We are the Xanthurans," the voice replied. "We speak for the Collective, an alliance of over 300 species. We have been waiting for your people to reach the stars." "Waiting for us?" Jake asked. "Why?" There was a pause. When the voice came back, it sounded different somehow, more serious. "Because your world is in great danger, and we have come to protect you." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of danger?" "May we come aboard your vessel?" "This is a conversation better held face to face." Jake looked around the bridge. Ryan was shaking his head slightly, but Lisa nodded. "We'll meet you in our main docking bay," Jake said. An hour later, Jake stood in the docking bay with his senior officers. The Xanthuran shuttle was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. It looked like it was made of living light, and it made no sound at all as it landed. 3 figures stepped out of the shuttle. They were tall, much taller than humans, with skin that seemed to shimmer like crystal. Their faces were almost human, but their eyes were larger and seemed to hold ancient wisdom. They wore robes that moved like water. The tallest one stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Vextari. We are honored to meet the humans at last." Jake had practiced this moment in his head 1,000 times, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. "Welcome aboard the Discovery, Ambassador." "I'm Captain Morrison. This is Dr. Martinez, Commander Blake, and Lieutenant Chun." "Your species is young," Vextari said, "but we have been watching you for some time. You have great potential, but you are also in great danger." "You mentioned that before," Jake said. "What kind of danger?" The 3 aliens looked at each other. Jake got the feeling they were communicating somehow, but he couldn't tell how. Finally, Vextari spoke again. "There are forces in this galaxy that you cannot imagine. Ancient things that have existed since before your son was born. They move between the stars, consuming everything in their path. Your world lies directly in their path." "What are they?" Dr. Martinez asked. "We call them the Devourers," Vextari said. "They are not alive as you understand life. There's something else, something terrible. Jake felt his mouth go dry. When will they reach Earth? We do not know. It could be years or it could be centuries, but they will come. This is why we must act now. What do you want from us? Commander. Blake asked. Jake could hear the suspicion in his voice. We want to help you, Vextari said. We can provide your world with protection. Our ships can guard your system. We can share some of our technology with you. In return, we ask only for your cooperation. What kind of cooperation? Jake asked. Resources. Materials we need to maintain our ships and equipment. Your world has many things we need. Jake felt something twist in his stomach. What kind of things? Rare minerals, energy sources. Nothing that will harm your people, we promise. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. How do we know you're telling the truth about this threat? For a moment, the aliens looked uncomfortable. You must trust us, Vextari said. We have protected many worlds. It is what we do. Can you show us proof of these devourers? Jake asked. We have records. But they are difficult for your technology to understand. In time, we will share what we can. Jake looked at his officers. Ryan was frowning. Lisa looked thoughtful. Amy was watching the aliens carefully. We'll need to contact Earth, Jake said. This is a decision that affects all of humanity. Of course, Vextari said, but time is important. The longer we wait, the more dangerous things become. Over the next few days, Jake and his crew worked with the Zentherans to establish communication with Earth. The aliens were helpful, but Jake noticed something strange. For beings with such advanced technology, they seemed to struggle with some basic things. Their equipment sometimes failed, and they asked for help with repairs more often than Jake would have expected. Dr. Martinez was the first to voice what they were all thinking. Something doesn't add up, she said during a private meeting with the senior staff. If they're so advanced, why do they need so much help from us? Maybe they're just being polite, Amy suggested, but she didn't sound convinced. I've been monitoring their communications, Ryan said. They're using encryption, but I've picked up some fragments. They seem worried about something, more worried than they're letting on. Jake stared out at the stars through the port window. What if they're not telling us everything? What if they're lying? Lisa asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, Amy's communicator beeped. Captain, we're getting a message from Earth. The President wants to speak with you. Jake sighed. Patch it through to my ready room. And Amy, keep monitoring those alien communications. I want to know what they're really saying to each other. As Jake walked to his ready room, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to make a very big mistake. The Zentherans claimed they wanted to protect Earth, but Jake was starting to wonder if they were the ones Earth needed protection from. The conversation with President Cole was long and difficult. In the end, Earth's leaders decided to accept the Zentheran offer of protection. Jake could understand why. The idea of an unknown threat coming to destroy humanity was terrifying. But as he watched the first Zentheran ships take position around Earth, he couldn't help but wonder if they had just invited the enemy inside their walls. Time would tell if humanity had chosen wisely. But Jake Morrison had a feeling that the real test was still to come. 6 months had passed since the Zentherans arrived at Earth. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of the Orbital Defense Station, watching the alien ships patrol the outer edges of the solar system. There were dozens of them now. Beautiful crystal vessels that caught the light from the sun and reflected it in rainbow patterns across space, but Kate wasn't feeling peaceful as she watched them. She was angry. The monthly resource report, Admiral, said Colonel Pete Davis, handing her a datapad. Pete had been her aide for 3 years, and he knew her moods well enough to stay quiet when she was thinking. Kate looked at the numbers and felt her jaw tighten. They're taking more again. Yes, ma'am. 20% increase from last month. They say they need more rare earth metals for their ship repairs. Kate threw the pad down on her desk. Ship repairs. They've been here 6 months, Pete. How much repair work can their ships need? I don't know, ma'am. But President Cole approved the request. Kate walked to the window and stared out at the alien fleet. When they first arrived, Earth's leaders had been grateful. The Zentherans had shared some technology with humanity. Better communication systems, improved medical equipment, and energy shields that could protect important buildings. But for every gift they gave, they seemed to need 10 times as much in return. "What's the status on the mining operations?" Kate asked. "Running at maximum capacity. The Zentherans need titanium, platinum, and those rare earth elements. We're stripping 3 asteroids clean every month just to keep up with their demands." Kate shook her head. "And they still won't tell us exactly what we're being protected from." "No, ma'am. Every time someone asks, they give the same answer. Ancient threats, cosmic dangers, forces beyond human understanding." President Nathan Cole was having the same conversation 300 miles below, in the White House Situation Room. He sat at the head of a long table, looking at reports from every major world leader. The story was the same everywhere. The Zentherans were helpful, polite, and grateful. They were also expensive. "The Chinese are complaining about the energy costs," said Secretary of State Helen Parks. "The Zentherans need massive amounts of power to run their equipment. It's putting a strain on the global power grid. What about the Europeans?" "President," Cole asked, "same story. The German Chancellor says their industrial output is down 15% because so much energy is being diverted to Zentheran facilities." Cole rubbed his temples. He was getting a headache, and it wasn't even noon yet. "What do they say when we ask them to reduce their power usage?" "They apologize and explain that it's necessary for our protection, then they ask for more." Dr. Ben Rogers was having his own problems in his laboratory at the CDC. He was Earth's leading expert on alien biology, which made him one of the most important people on the planet. But right now, he felt like one of the most confused. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, staring at the genetic analysis on his computer screen. His assistant, Dr. Carol Kim, looked over his shoulder. "What doesn't make sense?" she asked. "Look at this DNA sample from Ambassador Vextari. See these markers here?" Carol studied the screen. "Those look like artificial modifications." "Exactly. But the Zentherans claim their species is millions of years old. These genetic changes look recent. Very recent." "How recent?" Ben pointed to another section of the data. "Based on the cellular decay patterns, I'd say these modifications were made within the last 1,000 years, maybe less." Carol frowned, "But that would mean that they're not the ancient, wise species they claim to be? They're young, possibly younger than human civilization?" "Across the solar system, Captain Jake." Morrison was making his own discoveries. He had been promoted to head of Earth's First Contact Division, which meant he spent most of his time studying alien technology and trying to understand their new protectors. Today, he was investigating something that had been bothering him for months. The Zentherans claimed to protect many worlds across the galaxy, but they had never provided proof. So Jake had decided to look for it himself. "Amy, have you found anything?" he asked Lieutenant Chun, who was now his chief communications officer. "I've been monitoring their long-range communications for weeks," Amy said. "I finally broke through. Their encryption yesterday. Captain, you need to see this." Jake walked over to her station. "What did you find?" "Communications with other worlds, dozens of them. All under Zentheran protection. That's good news, right?" "It proves they're telling the truth," Amy shook her head. "Read these reports, sir. Look at what these worlds are like now." Jake read through the translated messages. The more he read, the more his stomach turned. World after world, the same pattern. Species that had once been proud and independent, now reduced to servants. Their resources stripped away, their people working constantly to meet Zentheran demands. "This can't be right," Jake said. "These civilizations sound like slaves." "That's what I thought, too." So I dug deeper. I found historical records from some of these worlds. "Captain, you should see what they were like before the Zentherans arrived." Amy brought up a series of files on her screen. They showed advanced civilizations, proud species with their own technologies and cultures. But the dates on the files were all old. Some were hundreds of years old. What happened to them? Jake asked. The Zentherans happened. They arrived, offered protection from some terrible threat, and then slowly took over. The species became dependent on them. Over time, they lost their own technology, their own culture. Now they exist only to serve their protectors. Jake felt cold. How many worlds? At least 50 that I can confirm. Probably more. Jake stared at the data. Amy, I want you to compile everything you found. We need to show this to Admiral Sullivan and President Cole. Yes, sir, but Captain, there's something else. I intercepted a message yesterday that I think you should see. Amy brought up another file. It was a communication between Ambassador Vextari and someone called the High Coordinator. The humans are more productive than expected, the message read. Their industrial capacity exceeds our projections by 30%. Recommend increasing resource extraction quotas. They're treating us like a mining operation, Jake said quietly. There's more, sir. Listen to this part. Human military technology is primitive but shows potential. Recommend gradual suppression of their weapons development programs. We cannot allow them to become too independent. Jake felt anger building in his chest. They're not protecting us. They're farming us. The next day, Jake requested an emergency meeting with Earth's leadership. He sat in the White House situation room with President Cole, Admiral Sullivan, Dr. Rogers, and several other officials. The evidence was spread out on the table in front of them. So you're telling me, President Cole said slowly, that our protectors are actually parasites? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Mr. President, Jake replied. They've done this to dozens of other species. They arrive, claim there's some terrible threat, offer protection, and then slowly bleed the planet dry. Dr. Rogers nodded. It fits with my biological analysis. They're not the ancient species they claim to be. They're young, and they've built their entire civilization on exploiting other races. Admiral Sullivan was studying the communications intercepts. This explains why they won't tell us specifics about the threat. There probably isn't one. Actually, Jake said, there might be a threat, but I don't think it's what they told us. What do you mean? President Cole asked. Jake pulled up another file. I found references in their communications to something called the Devourers. They mention them in several messages, and every time they do, the tone changes. They're genuinely afraid of something. So there is a real threat? Admiral Sullivan asked. Maybe, but I think the Zentherans are running from it, not fighting it, and they're using us as shields. President Cole leaned back in his chair. So what do we do? If there really is something out there that scares them, maybe we do need their protection. Jake looked around the room. With respect, Mr. President, I think we need to ask ourselves a different question. If these Zentherans are so advanced and powerful, why are they running? And if they're not as advanced as they claim, what good is their protection anyway? Dr. Rogers spoke up. Jake has a point. Everything I've seen suggests they're not much more advanced than we are. They just have different technology. Admiral Sullivan was nodding, and they've been taking our resources for months. At this rate, they'll strip Earth bare within 10 years. President Cole was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. What? Do you recommend? I think we need to confront them, Jake said. Tell them we know what they're doing and demand answers. Real answers this time. And if they refuse? Jake looked out the window at the alien ships orbiting Earth. Then maybe, it's time we learn to protect ourselves. As the meeting ended, none of them knew that their conversation was being monitored. High above Earth, Ambassador Vextari listened to the translated discussion with growing concern. The humans were more clever than expected. They had discovered the truth far sooner than any other species. Vextari opened a communication channel. To the High Coordinator. We have a problem, he began. The humans are asking questions. Can they be managed? Came the reply. I believe so. But we may need to accelerate our timeline. The emergency alarm woke Admiral Kate Sullivan at 3 a.m. She rolled out of bed and grabbed her uniform, knowing that nothing good ever happened when the deep space sensors went off in the middle of the night. What do we have? She asked as she rushed into the command center. Colonel Pete Davis looked pale. "Ma'am, you need to see this." Our long-range sensors picked up something coming toward the solar system. "It's big and it's moving fast." Kate looked at the main display screen. At first, she couldn't understand what she was seeing. The object was massive, easily the size of Earth's moon, but it was moving at a speed that should have been impossible. "How fast?" she asked. "0.7 light speed, ma'am." "And it's not slowing down." Kate felt her blood turn cold. "That's impossible. Nothing that big can move that fast." "That's what I thought too. But the computers have checked the readings 3 times. It's real." Kate studied the sensor data. The object wasn't just big and fast. It was wrong. The readings showed that space itself was bending around it, twisting in ways that hurt her eyes to look at. "How long until it gets here?" "At current speed, 14 hours. Kate reached for her communicator. "Get me President Cole, now." Across the solar system, the Zenthran fleet was in chaos. Ambassador Vextari stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the same readings that Earth had detected. But unlike the humans, he knew exactly what they meant. "High Coordinator," he said into his communication device. "It has found us." The reply came immediately. "Are you certain?" "There is no doubt. The energy signature matches perfectly. It is a devourer, and it is heading directly for this system." "How long do we have?" "Less than 1 Earth day." There was a long pause. "Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Abandon the protection fleet and retreat to the outer systems." Vextari looked at his crew. They were all afraid. They had good reason to be. "What about the humans?" "They are not our concern. The devourer will consume them, as it has consumed countless others. Perhaps that will satisfy it long enough for us to escape." Vextari closed the communication and turned to his navigation officer. "Prepare the fleet for immediate departure." But before they could move, every screen on every ship lit up with an incoming message from Earth. President Cole's face appeared, and he did not look happy. "Ambassador Vextari," the president said, "we need to talk." Now, an hour later, Vextari found himself in the White House Situation Room, facing the entire human leadership. Admiral Sullivan was there, along with Captain Morrison, Dr. Rogers, and several others he didn't recognize. "We know what's coming," President Cole said without introduction. "Our sensors detected it 12 hours ago. We also know you're preparing to run." Vextari tried to look calm, but his crystalline skin was flickering with nervous energy. "The situation is complex, President Cole. There are protocols we must follow." "Cut the lies," Admiral Sullivan said. "We know what you really are. We know about the other worlds you've protected. We know you're parasites, not guardians." Vextari's skin went completely dark. No human had ever spoken to him like that before. "But right now," President Cole continued, "we don't care about that. We want to know what's heading for our solar system." Vextari looked around the room. Every human face was hard and determined. These were not the grateful, dependent species he was used to dealing with. "It is called a devourer," he said quietly. "It is ancient beyond your understanding. It consumes entire star systems, converting all matter and energy into more of itself." "How many of them are there?" Captain Morrison asked. "We do not know. They appear randomly across the galaxy. No one knows where they come from or why they exist. They simply consume and grow." Dr. Rogers leaned forward. "What do they look like?" "They are not alive as you understand life. They are machines, but not built by any species we know. They exist partially outside normal space and time. This makes them nearly impossible to destroy." "Nearly impossible?" Admiral Sullivan caught the word immediately. Vextari hesitated. "No species has ever successfully fought a devourer and survived. The best any civilization can do is run and hope it doesn't follow." "But you said nearly impossible," President Cole pressed. "That means someone thinks it can be done." "There are theories. Some believe that disrupting their dimensional anchoring could trap them in normal space, where they might be vulnerable. But it is only theory. No one has ever tried it." "Why not?" Morrison asked. Vexthari looked at him as if the question was insane, because attempting to fight a devourer is suicide. It would require getting close enough to target their phase transition points, and anything that gets that close is immediately consumed. The room was quiet for a moment, then President Cole spoke. How long until it gets here? 10 hours, perhaps less. And you're planning to run, of course? It is the only rational response. President Cole looked around the room at his advisors. Admiral Sullivan nodded slightly. Captain Morrison was studying the data on his tablet. Dr. Rogers looked thoughtful. Ambassador Vexthari, President Cole said. We thank you for the information. You're free to go. Vexthari was confused. You are not coming with us? No, but you will be consumed. Your entire species will be destroyed. President Cole smiled. But it wasn't a pleasant smile. Maybe we'll find a way to kill it. Vexthari stared at him. You cannot be serious. This is a cosmic force beyond comprehension. You are a young species with primitive technology. You're right, Admiral. Sullivan said. We are young, we are primitive, but we're also stubborn. Vexthari left the meeting convinced that humanity was about to commit species-wide suicide. He immediately ordered the Zenthran fleet to retreat to the edge of the solar system, far enough away to escape when the Devourer finished consuming the inner planets. But as his ships moved away from Earth, he noticed something strange. The human fleet wasn't running. Instead, ships were launching from Earth and Mars, moving toward the outer solar system where the Devourer would arrive. They truly mean to fight it, his tactical officer said. Impossible, Vexthari replied. No species is that foolish. Captain Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. She had been given command just 6 months ago, and now she was about to face something that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. Status report, she ordered. All systems green, Captain, replied Commander Tony Martinez, her first officer, weapons loaded and ready. Any word from the other ships? Admiral Sullivan reports the fleet is in position. 47 ships total. Sarah looked at the main screen. In the distance, she could see the Devourer approaching. It was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. It looked like a mountain-sized piece of twisted metal and crystal, but it moved through space like it was swimming through water. Reality seemed to bend around it, and looking at it too long made her eyes hurt. Captain, her science officer called out, I'm reading massive energy discharges from the target. It's beginning some kind of scanning process. Scanning for what? I think it's cataloging the system's resources. Looking at every planet, every asteroid, every ship, Sarah felt a chill. Including us? Yes, ma'am, we're definitely on its list. Suddenly, every screen on every human ship lit up with the same message. It wasn't in any language they knew, but somehow they could understand it. The meaning appeared directly in their minds, like a voice speaking inside their heads. This system contains suitable resources for conversion. Organic contamination detected. Beginning sterilization process. You have 7 solar rotations to evacuate before consumption begins. The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. Sarah looked around her bridge. Her crew was scared, but they were still at their stations. You heard it, people. We have 7 days. 7 days to what, Captain? Martinez asked. Sarah smiled grimly. 7 days to figure out how to kill something that's supposedly unkillable. On Earth, General Marcus Webb was having the same conversation with the Global Defense Council. Every military leader from every nation was connected to the emergency meeting. The alien gave us some useful information, Webb said. This thing exists partially outside normal space. If we can disrupt its dimensional anchoring, we might be able to trap it where our weapons can hurt it. How do we do that? Ask the Chinese general. Dr. Vasquez has an idea. Elena, tell them about your project. Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared on screen from her laboratory. For the past 2 years, we've been working on controlled black hole generation for stellar engineering. The technology creates small, temporary black holes that we can manipulate. You want to throw a black hole at this thing? The British admiral asked. Not throw, Elena replied. We need to get close enough to disrupt its phase transition points. The black hole generator would create a localized space-time distortion that should force the devourer into normal space. And then, General Webb answered, then we hit it with everything we have? This is insane, the Russian commander said. We're talking about fighting something that has destroyed civilizations millions of years older than us. Yes, Webb replied. Calmly, we are. The room was quiet for a moment. Finally, the Japanese admiral spoke. When do we start? As the human fleet prepared for the impossible, the Zentharans watched from the edge of the solar system. Dr. Elena Vasquez had not slept in 3 days. She stood in her laboratory aboard the experimental ship UES Prometheus, staring at the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created. The black hole generator looked surprisingly ordinary. It was about the size of a refrigerator, covered in blinking lights and cooling pipes. Are you sure this will work? Asked Captain Luke Anderson, the commander of the Prometheus. He was a good man, but Elena could see the fear in his eyes. I'm not sure of anything, Elena replied honestly. We're trying to trap something that exists partially outside our reality using physics we barely understand, but it's the best plan we have. Luke nodded. How close do we need to get? Elena looked at her calculations for the 100th time. 500 kilometers, maybe less. Jesus, Luke whispered. That's practically touching distance for something that size. I know, but the black hole needs to be positioned exactly at the creature's phase transition points. If we're too far away, it won't work. Captain Sarah Kim's voice came over the communication system. All ships, this is Defiance. The target has reached Jupiter. It's beginning the consumption process. Elena and Luke rushed to the observation deck. Through the reinforced windows, they could see Jupiter in the distance, but something was wrong with the giant planet. It looked smaller than it should have been. My God, Luke said, it's actually eating Jupiter. Elena watched in horror as the gas giant visibly shrank. Streams of matter were flowing away from Jupiter toward the devourer, like water being sucked down a drain. The alien machine was converting Jupiter's mass into more of itself, growing larger and more complex by the minute. How long until it finishes with Jupiter? Luke asked. Elena checked her instruments. At this rate, maybe 6 hours. Then it will move toward Mars. On Earth, General Marcus Webb stood in the Global Command Center, watching the same terrible sight. Every screen in the room showed Jupiter being consumed. It was the most frightening thing any human had ever witnessed. Status report on our forces, Webb ordered. Colonel Jane Foster looked up from her station. All ships are in position, sir. Admiral Sullivan is coordinating the attack from the flagship Dakota. Captain Morrison is leading the fighter squadrons. What about the Prometheus? Dr. Vasquez reports the black hole generator is ready. Captain Anderson is moving into position, Webb nodded. And our backup plan? Every nuclear weapon on Earth is loaded onto fast attack ships. If the black hole plan fails, we'll try to overwhelm it with sheer firepower. That won't work, said Dr. Rogers, who was monitoring the aliens' behavior. Look at these readings. The devourer is converting Jupiter's matter faster than we thought possible. Our nuclear weapons would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain. Then we better hope Elena's plan works, Webb replied. Aboard the UES Defiance, Admiral Kate Sullivan was having the same doubts. She stood on the bridge, looking at the tactical display. The human fleet looked pitifully small compared to the devourer. Admiral, her communications officer called out, we're getting a message from the Zentharan fleet. Put it through. Ambassador. Vextarius' face appeared on the screen. He looked genuinely concerned. Admiral Sullivan, you must reconsider. What you are attempting is suicide. Please evacuate your people while there is still time. Thank you for your concern, Ambassador. Kate replied coldly. But we'll handle this ourselves. You do not understand. The devourer has consumed thousands of star systems. Entire civilizations have been erased by these creatures. You cannot fight something like this. Watch us. Kate cut the communication and turned to her tactical officer. Commander Blake, R. All ships ready? Ryan Blake checked his displays. Yes, ma'am. All 47 ships report ready for battle. Then let's begin. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. The Prometheus would get close enough to the Devourer to deploy the black hole generator. Once the creature was trapped, in normal space, every human ship would attack at once, focusing their fire on what Elena believed were the creature's vital systems. Captain Luke Anderson took the Prometheus on a course that would bring them directly toward the Devourer. As they got closer, the ship began to shake. Reality itself seemed unstable around the alien machine. "Elena, we're getting some strange readings," Luke said into his communicator. "I see them," Elena replied from her laboratory. "The creature is affecting space-time around itself. Our instruments are having trouble figuring out where it really is." "Is that going to be a problem?" "I don't know. We'll find out." As the Prometheus got closer, the crew began to experience strange effects. Colors seemed wrong. Sounds didn't make sense. Some crew members reported seeing things that weren't there. "This is affecting our minds," Dr. Stevens, the ship's doctor, reported. "The crew is showing signs of dimensional displacement syndrome. Can you treat it?" Luke asked. "I can give everyone medication to help, but if we stay close to this thing too long, we'll all go insane." Luke made a decision. "Elena, how much time do you need?" "Once we're in position, 30 seconds to deploy the generator. Then we get in fast and get out faster." The Prometheus accelerated toward the Devourer. As they approached, the alien machine seemed to notice them. Part of its surface shifted, revealing weapons that looked like nothing in human experience. "It's targeting us," Ryan Blake reported from his position on the Defiance. "All ships, begin attack run," Admiral Sullivan ordered. "Draw its fire away." From the Prometheus, the human fleet charged toward the Devourer, 46 ships against a creature the size of a moon. Their weapons opened fire, sending streams of plasma and nuclear missiles toward the alien machine. The Devourer's response was terrifying. Beams of energy that seemed to cut through space itself lashed out at the human ships. The destroyer UES Atlanta was hit by one of these beams and simply ceased to exist. It didn't explode or break apart, it just wasn't there anymore. "The Atlanta is gone," Blake reported, his voice shaking. "Keep firing," Sullivan ordered. "We have to give the Prometheus time." Captain Morrison led his fighter squadron in a desperate attack on the Devourer's weapon systems. His small ships dodged between the alien's defenses, dropping nuclear charges directly onto its hull. "This is Morrison," he called over the radio. "The nukes are having some effect. I can see damage to its outer surface." "Keep it up, Sullivan," replied Luke. "How much longer?" Aboard the Prometheus, Luke was fighting to keep his ship steady as they approached their target point. The closer they got, the worse the reality distortions became. "Almost there," Elena called out. "I need 10 more seconds." "We don't have 10 seconds," Luke replied, watching another human ship disappear under the Devourer's fire. "Deploy it now." Elena activated the black hole generator. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then space around the Devourer began to twist and fold. The alien machine, which had been phasing in and out of normal reality, suddenly became solid and real. It worked. Elena shouted, "The creature is trapped in normal space." "All ships, concentrate fire on the target," Admiral Sullivan ordered. The remaining human ships unleashed everything they had. Nuclear weapons, plasma cannons, kinetic projectiles, and experimental energy weapons all struck the Devourer at once. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient machine was hurt. Part of its hull cracked open, revealing complex machinery inside. Strange fluids leaked into space, freezing instantly in the cold vacuum, but the Devourer was not helpless. Even trapped in normal space, it was still incredibly dangerous. Its weapons swept across the human fleet, destroying ship after ship. Captain Sarah Kim watched the frigate UES Portland break apart under alien fire. "We're losing too many ships," she reported. "Keep fighting," Sullivan replied. "We're hurting." Commander Rachel Torres led her fighter squadron on a suicide run into the crack in the Devourer's hull. Her 12 fighters carried the most powerful nuclear weapons humanity had ever built. "This is Torres," she called over the radio. "We're going in." Her fighters dove into the opening in the alien machine. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a brilliant flash of light erupted from inside the Devourer. The entire structure shuddered and went dark. "Direct hit," Blake reported. "The creature has stopped moving." But their celebration was short-lived. The Devourer wasn't dead. It was adapting. Its hull began to repair itself, and its weapons came back online. "It's learning from our attacks," Elena observed from the Prometheus. "It's adapting its defenses." "Then we need to hit it with something it can adapt to," Admiral Sullivan said. General Webb's voice came over the radio from Earth. "Admiral, we're sending everything we have. Every ship, every weapon, every pilot who can fly is coming your way." "How long?" Sullivan asked. 20 minutes. Sullivan looked at the tactical display. They had lost more than half their ships, and the Devourer was getting stronger. "I don't think we have 20 minutes. That's when Captain Morrison had an idea. "Admiral, what if we don't try to destroy it? What if we try to push it away?" "Explain." The black hole generator is still working. If we can create multiple black holes around the creature, we might be able to push it out of the solar system. Elena's voice came over the radio. "That could work, but it would require every ship to get dangerously close." "We're already dangerously close," Sullivan replied. "Luke, can you create more black holes?" 3 months after the battle, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the newly built conference room aboard the orbital station, Unity. The room was filled with representatives from dozens of different alien species. They had all come to Earth for the same reason. They wanted to know how humanity had done the impossible. "The Devourer has been a threat to our species for over 2,000 years, said Ambassador Kethver from the Rigelian Empire. He was a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 arms and golden eyes. "We lost 17 colony worlds to those creatures. How did you destroy one with such primitive technology?" Kate looked around the room at all the alien faces. Some were humanoid, others were completely different from anything on Earth, but they all had the same expression. Fear mixed with hope. "We didn't destroy it," Kate replied honestly. "We outsmarted it." "Explain," said Commander Zix from the Andromedan Collective. She looked like a giant mantis made of living crystal. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped forward. She had been asked to explain the technical details to the alien scientists. The Devourer existed partially outside normal space-time. This made it nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons, but it also created a weakness. "What weakness?" asked the representative from Tau Ceti. "Its dimensional anchoring points were unstable. By creating multiple gravitational distortions around those points, we forced the creature into a state where it couldn't maintain its phase shift. The competing forces tore it apart. The room was quiet for a moment. Finally, Ambassador Kethver spoke. "You used physics as a weapon." "We used everything as a weapon," Elena replied. "Physics, mathematics, our ships, our lives. We treated it like an engineering problem, not a force of nature." Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, stood up. "That's the difference between us and you. When you saw the Devourers, you saw unstoppable cosmic forces. We saw targets that needed better tactics. But the cost," said another alien. "Your fleet was almost completely destroyed." "Yes," Kate said quietly. "We lost 44 ships and over 12,000 people. But we saved our world and proved these things can be beaten." Ambassador Vextari had been sitting quietly in the back of the room. Now he stood up, his crystalline skin flickering with nervous energy. "What you accomplished was remarkable, but there are more Devourers out there. Many more. What will you do when they come for you again?" Jake smiled. "We'll be ready for them." "How can you be so confident?" "Because we're not the same species that met you 2 years ago," Jake replied. "We've learned from this fight. We've improved our technology, our tactics, our understanding of how these creatures work. Most importantly, we've learned that there's no problem that can't be solved if you're willing to try hard enough." President Nathan Cole stood up from his chair at the head of the table. "Which brings us to why we called this meeting. We're establishing the Terran Defense Alliance?" The aliens looked confused. "What does that mean?" asked the Tau Ceti representative. "It means we're offering you real protection," Cole said. "Not The kind where we take your resources and leave you helpless. The kind where we teach you to fight for yourselves. You would share your anti-devour technology? Commander Zix asked. We'll share everything, Kate said. Technology, tactics, training. But in return, you have to commit to defending yourselves and your neighbors. No more running, no more hiding. We stand together or we fall apart. The room erupted in conversation as the alien representatives discussed this offer among themselves. Finally, Ambassador Kethver spoke for the group. What about the Zentharans? They have protected many worlds for centuries. Vexthari's skin went completely dark. Our protection was not real protection. We were parasites feeding on younger species. The humans have shown us what real strength looks like. So you're abandoning your protectorates? Asked another alien. We are freeing them, Vexthari replied. And we are asking to join this new alliance as equals, not as leaders. Over the next 6 months, the Terran Defense Alliance grew rapidly. 57 different species joined, bringing their own unique technologies and perspectives. Humans shared their black hole generators and gravitational weapons. The Rigelians contributed advanced shield technology. The Tausetians provided faster-than-light communication systems, but more importantly, they shared something else. For the first time in galactic history, species were working together as equals rather than as masters and servants. Dr. Ben Rogers established the first multi-species research station near Saturn. Scientists from dozens of worlds worked together to understand devourer technology and develop better defenses. It's amazing what we can accomplish when we're not afraid, Doctor. Rogers told his mixed crew of human and alien researchers. The Zentharans kept everyone isolated and dependent. Now that we're sharing knowledge, we're advancing faster than anyone thought possible. Captain Sarah Kim had been given command of the new Alliance fleet. Her flagship, the Use Guardian, was the most advanced ship ever built. It combined human engineering with alien technology in ways that surprised everyone. Status report, Sarah ordered as she walked onto the bridge. All systems green, Captain, replied her first officer, Commander Veltar, a Rigelian who had volunteered to serve under human command. The patrol fleet reports no unusual activity in sectors 7 through 12. What about the deep space sensors? Still quiet. No sign of devour activity anywhere in this region of the galaxy. Sarah nodded. It had been 8 months since. The battle at Earth and the galaxy had been surprisingly peaceful. Some of the Alliance members thought they had scared the devourers away. Sarah wasn't so optimistic. Her concerns proved correct 3 weeks later. Captain, called Lieutenant Amy Chun from her communications station. I'm getting a distress signal from the outer rim. It's the colony at Volf 359. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. What's their status? They're under attack. Multiple devourer constructs, larger than the one we fought at Earth. Sarah didn't hesitate. Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for immediate departure. Should we contact Earth for reinforcements? Commander Veltar asked. No time. We're 3 days away at maximum speed. By the time reinforcements arrive, Volf 359 will be gone. The Guardian and 12 other Alliance ships jumped to faster than light. Speed, racing toward a battle they weren't sure they could win. When they arrived at Volf 359, Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. There weren't just 1 or 2 devourers attacking the colony. There were 5 of them, each one larger than the creature that had nearly destroyed Earth. My God, whispered Dr. Martinez from her science station. They've adapted. Look at their hull configuration, Sarah studied the tactical display. The new devourers had thicker armor and more weapons. Worse, they seemed to be working together in a coordinated attack. They learned from what we did to their scout, Sarah realized. They're not going to make the same mistakes. Orders, Captain? Veltar asked. Sarah looked at her mixed crew of humans and aliens. They were all afraid, but they were ready to fight. We do what humans do best. We adapt faster than they do. The battle at Volf 359 lasted 6 hours. The Alliance fleet used new tactics that even the adapted devourers couldn't predict. Instead of trying to trap the creatures with black holes, They used coordinated gravity waves to push them into each other, causing massive collisions that damaged their hulls. When the fighting ended, 3 of the 5 Devourers had been destroyed. The other 2 had retreated, but not before the Alliance fleet had gathered crucial data about their new capabilities. "We won," Veltar said, but he didn't sound happy about it. "This time," Sarah replied, "but they're getting smarter. Next time will be harder." Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison was having the same conversation with the Alliance Council. "The Devourers are evolving their tactics. They're learning from each encounter, just like we are." "So what do we do?" asked President Cole. "We evolve faster," Morrison replied. "We share information immediately after every battle. We develop new weapons and tactics before they can adapt to our old ones. And we never, ever stop improving." Ambassador Kethver leaned forward in his chair. "You make it sound like this war will never end." "Maybe it won't," Morrison said. "Maybe the universe is just a place where life and intelligence have to constantly fight to survive. But that's okay. Fighting is what we're good at." "And we're not fighting alone anymore," added Kate Sullivan. "Every species in this alliance brings something unique to the table. Together we're stronger than any one threat." Over the following year, the Alliance faced 7 more Devourer attacks. Each battle was different, requiring new solutions and new tactics. But each time, they won. More importantly, they saved entire civilizations that would have been destroyed under the old system. The Alliance fleets didn't just protect colonies. They taught them to protect themselves. Captain Morrison, now commanding his own deep space exploration vessel, was investigating reports of Devourer activity near the galactic edge when he made a disturbing discovery. "Admiral Sullivan," he called. "Over the long-range communication system, you need to see this." "What did you find, Jake?" "Evidence of Devourer construction. They're not just adapting their existing units. They're building new ones, bigger ones." Kate felt a familiar chill. "How big?" "Think planet-sized." There was a long pause. "Any idea when they'll be ready?"